The quiet before the strike. They had trusted him for months, trained beside him, bled with him, prayed shoulder to shoulder in the dusty stillness of dawn. Corporal Yusuf spoke their language fluently, laughed at their jokes with perfect timing, even let the red earth of Burkina Faso stain his boots like every other soldier. But Commander Ibrahim Traore knew better. Behind Yusuf's quiet gaze, beneath the crisp salutes and soldiers' discipline, something pulsed out of rhythm. The man didn't belong. Not truly. And in Traore's experience, betrayal never arrived with noise. It crept in silently, concealed in the stillness just before the blade. The warning signs had begun as a whisper, a subtle shift in behavior. As dusk painted the Ouagadougou sky in molten gold, Commander Traore stood alone at the watchtower, not for inspection but to listen, to the rhythm of the base, to the unspoken language of men at war. Something was off. A lesser commander would have called it paranoia. Traore, however, trusted instinct over evidence. And Yusuf, with his sudden interest in satellite protocols, his eagerness for reconnaissance missions, his GPS watch syncing to external sources, was becoming a question that demanded an answer. But Traore said nothing. Not yet. He watched, waited, studied. 3 days passed like slow poison. With every hour, every gesture, a clearer picture emerged. Yusuf tapping a strange rhythm on his cup during mess, laughing a little too hard at Lieutenant Ouedraogo's jokes, tensing slightly, almost imperceptibly, when the satellite comms officer entered the room. Only a trained predator like Traore would notice. "Commander, you've barely touched your food," Captain Sankara murmured, sliding onto the bench beside him. An old friend since their academy days, Sankara knew when Traore's silence was not just brooding, but tactical. Traore offered a ghost of a smile. "Some hungers go beyond food, my friend." Sankara lowered his voice. "Which one troubles you tonight?" "The one for truth," Traore answered, eyes scanning the room like sonar through fog. That night, as most of the base slept beneath the smothering Sahel heat, Traore made his way to the comms hub, a modest space by NATO standards but layered in what they believed was impenetrable security. Lieutenant Dio sat at the main terminal, bathed in the glow of data streams. "Sir," Dio stood. "At ease," Traore said quietly. "I need access logs for the past month." Dio hesitated, barely a second, but long enough for Traore to note it. "All of them, sir?" "All," he said coldly. "And Dio—" Traore leaned in slightly. "This conversation never happened." Dio nodded. Minutes later, the screen bloomed with logs, timestamps, user IDs, terminal access points. Traore scanned quickly. "Filter by anomalies, late-night access, multiple logins, duration outliers." The list shortened. But what remained made Traore's pulse tighten. 3 unauthorized logins had occurred between 200 and 300 hours, dead of night, using the credentials of Lieutenant Colonel Konate, Traore's second-in-command. But Konate had been on leave for weeks, visiting family in Bobo Dioulasso. "Thank you, Lieutenant," Traore said. "Continue your duties." Outside, the heat clung to him like suspicion. This wasn't just espionage, it was calculated penetration. Someone with high-level access was feeding someone far outside their fences. The next morning broke in a ghostly mist. Traore, already dressed in fatigues, offered his pre-dawn prayers, every movement deliberate, sharpened by purpose. At the briefing, he made no mention of the logs or the covert surveillance. Instead, he announced new protocols. "Due to heightened regional threats," Traore said, his tone flat and official, "we will implement scheduled communications blackouts every 3rd day. No outgoing transmissions except via the command center. Personal devices will be surrendered. Effective tonight, 1800 hours." Murmurs of protest rippled. Major Ouedraogo stood. With respect, Commander, this could compromise our intel channels. It won't, Traore replied, because we will know when it happens. Our enemies will not. He studied the room, confusion, concern, and then, on Yusuf's face, something else, calculation. At precisely 1800 hours, the base went dark. Devices were collected, satellite links unplugged. The compound became a digital island. Unbeknownst to the men, Traore had set his trap. Guards he trusted were placed at critical junctions, the armory, vehicle depot, the perimeter, and one blind spot behind the generator building, a place the jamming field couldn't reach. At 0212 hours, the net closed. Yusuf, dressed in stealth gear, crept into the shadowed blind zone. A hidden camera captured him removing a device from beneath a loose stone. He activated it, briefly, then buried it again. But Traore didn't move. Not yet. A single message could be coincidence. He needed a pattern. He needed test.
The Shadow War. The package wasn't a bomb or a dossier, it was disinformation, artfully fabricated to look authentic. It included fake troop movements, fictional supply lines, and weapons capabilities that didn't exist. But hidden in the chaos were digital markers, breadcrumbs, that would trace the path of this intelligence leak to its final destination. For 3 days, Corporal Yusuf immersed himself in the intelligence division, dutifully parsing the phony satellite feeds, asking all the right questions, blending in perfect. But each night, the device hidden under a loose stone behind the generator sent out encrypted bursts, ghost transmissions into the void. On the 4th morning, Captain Sankara entered Commander Ibrahim Traore's office with a folder marked with a single red slash. "We confirmed it," he said flatly. "The markers lit up in Paris, not DGSE. Private." Traore didn't blink. "Who?" "Sentinel Global Security." Traore exhaled slowly. He knew them. A shadowy private military firm with deep ties to French commercial and strategic interests across West Africa. Officially unaffiliated, unofficially untouchable. And Yusuf's background? "Forgeries," Sankara said. "I spoke directly with Colonel Tay from Northern Command. No record of any Yusuf." The web was confirmed. Now it was time to send a message. That night, under another blackout, Traore personally doctored a new intelligence package for Yusuf. It contained explosive false details, GPS coordinates for a clandestine meeting between Traore and representatives of the Wagner Group, the notorious Russian paramilitary force. It was bait the West could not ignore. When Yusuf received the data, surveillance captured the tell, a brief pause, widened eyes, stilled fingers, then composure. But Traore had seen the crack. He followed Yusuf that night, watching from the shadows as the corporal activated the device. But this time, Yusuf spoke into it, in French, urgent, fearful. 3 days later, Traore entered Yusuf's quarters before dawn, empty. Minutes later, under the mattress, he found the transmitter. When Yusuf returned an hour later, Traore was waiting inside. "You left your door unlocked," Traore said calmly. "Old habit," Yusuf replied, trying to smile. They both knew the truth. By noon, the base was sealed. Yusuf was never formally arrested, never accused. But every soldier knew something dark had been unearthed. The seized device contained damning audio, GPS data, encrypted communications in Parisian French, 11 months of infiltration. The final message read, "Commander Traore suspects nothing." It was a lie, a final lie. Traore summoned Yusuf. The room was silent. Then Traore pressed play. The voice was Yusuf's. When it stopped, Traore asked one question. "Why?" Yusuf choked on his reply. "Because your strength terrifies them. I admired you, but they own me." Traore said nothing. He made a single call. 6 hours later, a non-flag aircraft flew Yusuf to France in silence. No chains, no press, no martyrdom. Back at camp, the official line was simple. A wolf had been removed from the flock. But whispers turned to waves. The people of Ouagadougou sensed the truth. Foreign hands had reached too far. President Damiba called Traore for a private briefing. "How deep does it go?" he asked. "Yusuf was a symptom, not the disease," Traore replied. "The disease is the belief that Africa cannot define itself." Some called such talk dangerous. Traore called silence more dangerous. Weeks passed. Traore quietly followed the routes Yusuf had watered. The network was vast. Not just spies, informants, compromised officials, corrupt contractors. A new operation began. Subtle, precise. A finance official quietly resigned. 3 consultants lost clearance. A popular radio host changed his tune. No arrests, no headlines. But in foreign embassies, nerves frayed. Then, Traore made a journey to the village of Koma, near the Mali border. There, in a mud brick hut, he met Amadou Kawanda, an old resistance fighter who had once mentored him. They spoke in the old tongue, about neo-colonialism, about sovereignty. Kawanda gave Traore a medallion, a symbol of Mossi kingship, and a promise. Names will reach you. Use them wisely. In weeks, Traore received cryptic leads, phone records, land deeds, secret recordings. He mapped influence, pressure points, collusion. And then came the summons. President Damiba revealed a coup was coming, Western-backed. Colonel Bamuni, presidential guard commander, was implicated. Traore was authorized to stop it. Quietly. No written orders, no public arrests. Within 72 hours, Bamuni was reassigned. Special Unit 9, in plain clothes, flooded key points in the capital. Communications failed, phones stopped working, fear set in. The coup evaporated before it could begin. The French extracted their advisors. Bamuni crossed into Mali. The message was clear: we are not asleep. Traore, in the dark of his quarters, finally unclasped the medallion and stared at its ancient grooves. Burkina Faso had faced many enemies. Now it faced ghosts, but it would not face them alone. The war for sovereignty had begun, and this time, Africa would write the ending.